Hey my friends, it is me. I'm back to make a video that is long overdue. Uh, a while ago, I said I was going to show you guys how to get started advertising your book. I was going to use the example of High Point, which was formerly one of my romance books that I have rebranded into a thriller, trying to reach a slightly different audience with the same book. It's this big pretentious scheme I have. I even went so far as to produce a video in which I showed you how to generate keywords for this particular book. But then I didn't continue, and the reason I didn't continue is because I started thinking, is this the best place to get started? Because what you got to remember is I have been writing for 7 years now. I've sold 65,000 copies of my books. I've reached 320,000 readers on Kindle Unlimited. As a romance author, I'm pretty established and pretty successful. What I have to do is completely reinvent my thought process and think about how do I do things as somebody who doesn't have any of the resources that I would as a romance author. For example, it's much easier to advertise your books as a romance author if you've already got 10 other books in your series, because if you can get one person hooked on one book, they could potentially buy all of the books. So it's a real game changer having multiple books. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't think about advertising your books when you start off. If for nothing else, it's just like a proof of concept. So I made a video recently about how important your cover is. And there are various things to do with your book that are going to make or break your career as an author. Your cover is just one of them. You know, you've got to be able to have a blurb that really draws people in. You've got to price your book appropriately. You've got to make sure your book is in the right categories. You've got to make sure your look inside looks good. There are all these little details which, if you don't know how to do them, you don't do them. They're not complicated. They're not difficult. But obviously, writing a book and publishing and marketing a book are two different skill sets, and they're not necessarily skill sets that come easily to people. So I wanted to start off by showing you what I might do if I was, well, kind of in the situation that I am in which I've published a book like this. It's essentially published by an unknown author because I have been publishing for years under a pen name. It's not romance, and romance is kind of a fast-moving genre, so you can normally get a lot of traction there. So where do you even begin trying to reach the people who might read this book? And you know what? Advertising on Amazon can be very, very powerful, and I'm going to look into that and make videos about that a lot. But if you're just starting off, Facebook is the place to be. Yeah. Why? Well, this is the kind of book I think that would lend itself to Facebook, because it's got this very big dramatic cover. It's designed in the style of like the Clive Cussler covers, so I think it would grab people's attention. And for just a little bit of money, I'm going to be able to figure out whether people want to buy this book or not. And that's really where it all comes from. You have to dip your toe into advertising just to see if people will buy your book. And if they do that, then you can start worrying about the complicated stuff, scaling up your adverts, optimizing your adverts for better conversions and better click-through rates and things like that. Before you do any of that, you just have to get started. So I am going to do exactly that. I'm going to run a very, very, very boring, business-like $5 a day campaign on Facebook to see if I can sell copies of this book. And I'm going to show you exactly how I'm doing that. And I'm going to be doing that in a way that's very different to how I would do it as an established romance author, where I have a lot of things that I can use to my advantage that authors just starting out don't. So first thing we're going to do is head on over to Amazon. And I'm looking at this screen rather than this screen. So here we are on my book page. And this is where I want people on Facebook to end up. Now, how do I do that? Well, I need to create an ad. And for a Facebook ad, you will need creative. And what I mean by creative is the images that go into your advert. You can use video as well, and I've been experimenting with that. But I want to keep things super, super simple. So I've created 2 graphics. And the reason I have 2 graphics is one is at 16 by 9 ratio, just kind of like landscape for desktop and things like that. And one is a 1-to-1 ratio. And there are some certain rules and guidelines that it's worth remembering with Facebook. So Facebook doesn't like you to have excessive amounts of copy or words on your advert. In fact, they will spank you if words take up more than 20% of the page. As far as I'm aware, that doesn't include covers. So even though this has words, they don't really include that. And I've got Kindle Unlimited here, just to let people know that these books are available for free on Kindle Unlimited. And that's the thing. Just like with an advert doesn't sell your book. An advert will just drive people to where they can buy your book. There's an awful lot that you can say in an advert without words. And so, you know, I can throw Kindle Unlimited in here, and it might not be something that people who don't have Kindle Unlimited even register, but people who do have Kindle Unlimited will register it. And they might not consciously think about it, but it might make a difference to their decision to click on the ad or not. The other thing that I really, really strongly recommend if you're going to use Facebook to advertise your books is to actually have a display of your book in the context of a book. So you could have a 3D paperback image here, or I've got a picture of a Kindle with my book cover in that. And the reason for this is people scrolling through, if they didn't see this book here and they didn't see Kindle Unlimited, they might be like, ooh, there's a boat and guns and explosions. This looks exciting. Maybe it's a new graphic novel. Maybe it's a new video game. Maybe it's a movie. And they'll click through, and what you'll find is you're getting clicks that are costing you money. But these are people who wind up on Amazon on a book page and like, it's a book. Nobody told me it was a book. So I'm kind of doing some self-selection by having my book presented as a book in the advert. I'll probably get fewer clicks as a result, but that's fine because those clicks are people who know that this is going to be a book. Where do we even begin? Okay, so we start off in Ads Manager in Facebook, and that is at business.facebook.com. And if you are just starting out in the world of Facebook advertising, you might not have the opportunity to get to this yet. What you need to do is you need to create a page for your pen name, or you as an author. I have Roland Hume Books. You want to have a business account set up, and a business account will allow you to get into this dashboard, the Ads Manager dashboard, which is what you should be using for advertising. Facebook love taking your money. So if you have a page, they will offer things like a little ad center on the page, and you can boost posts, and you can quite happily sling them money. But I have never ever found much worth in those very limited tools that they have. It's worth jumping through the hoops to get a verified business account, get access to the Ads Manager, and that way you are going to be able to do so much more than you would otherwise. Like create ads like this. So what we are doing is we are simply creating a new campaign. The buying type is auction, and the consideration is traffic. Now, what it means by this is there are various goals that you can have, objectives for your campaign. And, you know, one of the ones that I've used with a lot of success in the past is lead generation, when I want to add people to my subscriber list. But right now, we're keeping things super simple. We are trying to get traffic. So all we are trying to do is reach people who are going to click on the ad and go through to this product page where hopefully they will buy the book. That's it. Name your campaign. So let's name it High Point April 2021 Traffic Campaign. And adverts on Facebook are nested. You start off with a campaign, which is like your overall campaign. Then you have an ad set where you can establish your budget and your audience, and then you can have ads where you can have multiple ads. And this is overly complicated for what we're trying to do, but later on, as you get more sophisticated with Facebook advertising, you'll find it quite useful because you can share an entire budget with a campaign and then split it with ad sets, or do the same thing with an ad set and then split it between the ads. There are lots of complexities that can really help you achieve all sorts of different things, but we don't need to worry about any of those yet. So once you click on OK, it takes you through to this part of Facebook where you design your ad. And we start off up here in the campaign. Campaign name, done. Special ad categories, we don't need to worry about that. Campaign details, auction. campaign objective is traffic. It does have show more options here. We don't need to worry about that. Likewise, A/B testing. This is where you can test one version of an ad against another version of an ad and see which performs better. We don't need to worry about that. Campaign budget optimization is something else. If you are trying to convert people, as in make them go to a website, do something, and then tell Facebook that they did it, then campaign optimization can help, because if you are bidding $5 a day for the next 10 days, what Facebook will do is squish that budget together, and some days it might spend 8 and some days it might spend 4. It's just trying to get you the best results. We don't need to worry about any of these things because we are running a super simple campaign, which is just driving people to a website. Next, this is the ad set. And the ad set is where we go in and start talking about budget and audience. So budget is very, very simple, your daily budget. With Facebook, the more money you spend, the more effective your advertising is going to be. But I definitely don't recommend jumping into anything with a massive budget until you've tested the waters, done a bit of an experimentation, see what happens. So I'm going to limit to $5 a day and see what happens. And I have zero expectations. And $5 a day is the kind of thing where, if you're losing $35 a week, just flushing it down the toilet, it's not ideal, but it's not going to mean you can't pay the mortgage. Your audience. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So as an established romance author, I have a mailing list with 3,000 readers, and what I can do is I can take my email addresses from my mailing list and put them into Facebook, and then Facebook will find people in the back end. Sounds a bit rude, that, doesn't it? In the back end, to create a lookalike algorithm, so you can get really, really targeted with the people you go after. Now, I am essentially starting anew as a brand new, fresh author. I do have a mailing list, but I'm not going to use it because I've got a few, less than 200 people on there. And, some of them are family and friends. Some of them are people who I've told about who've come and joined that list because they used to like my romance book. So nobody at the moment in my mailing list is really like my core audience. I have to find that audience, and that's one of the benefits of running an advertising campaign like this. So we're going to create a new audience. What are we going to do? Well, first of all, locations. I'm going to stick with the United States. You can definitely branch out further. The reason I'm sticking with the United States is when it does get to the case that you want to start doing fancy audiences, lookalikes and things like that, they are often geographic particular. So I am spending $5 in the United States because I specifically want to reach a United States audience, and then in the future I might be able to use this information to build a more effective audience. Ages. You can go 18 to 65. I'm going to say 25 up, because generally people under 25 don't read ebooks. I mean, you could even go older. I think Facebook kind of skews towards people who are in their 30s and older these days. My mum is on Facebook. Then you get to the detailed targeting, and this is where it gets frustrating when you're just starting out, because who do you go after? And Facebook is not book specific, so it's a very broad crowd of people. I am going to go after a few authors and try and put my advert in front of people who like those authors, and they're going to narrow that audience a bit. So obviously my book High Point was very strongly inspired by like the Sea Adventures of Clive Cussler. So let's put in Clive Cussler and see what comes up. Here we go. There are 183,000 people who like Clive Cussler. Here we go. It's not that many people, but that's fine. Who else is there? Tom Clancy is another author people like. 1.4 million people like him. Who is another author? I put Wilbur Smith, but I think you might not know who Wilbur Smith is. And it looks like Facebook doesn't either, so maybe that is a bad choice of author. Lee Child is one. Here we go. 1.7 million people like Lee Child. So we got 1.3 million people as an audience there, which it's not massive, but it's fairly appropriate. But now I'm going to narrow that audience, because people who like Clive Cussler probably are book fans, but people who like Lee Child might just like the Jack Reacher movies. People who like Tom Clancy might like the video games. So I'm going to put in Kindle. And what I'm doing here is narrowing the audience. So the detailed things. The people this advert will go to will either like Clive Cussler or Lee Child or Tom Clancy. And then they must also match as an and. They must also be interested in Kindle, or also be interested in Amazon Kindle. And it says here employers. We don't want employers, we want Kindle. 23 million people. Maybe they like ebooks. 131 million people. So now we've got about 1 million people who we are reaching out. And the nice thing is this is kind of an appropriate audience, because these are some authors who I think, you know, are relevant. We know that the people out there have expressed an interest in owning a Kindle or reading ebooks. So I think we are right then and there in the right spot to sort of continue. What you can do is click on this thing, detailed targeting expansion, and that gives Facebook permission to kind of branch out a little further from who you have targeted. I'm going to switch this on. And this then expands my audience to 6.8 million people. And I trust Facebook to do this, because really I'm slathering such a broad brush over my potential audience that I think you need to use the power of Facebook's algorithms to see whether they can reach a more appropriate group of people there. And then you want to save this audience. So what are we going to call it? We're going to call it High Point Generic Audience April 2021. Save. Okay, that is good. Then automatic placements or manual placements. This is where whereabouts on the screen you're going to get your advert shown. I trust Facebook to do this. Optimization for ad delivery. Sorry, just looking out the window there. We don't need to worry about this, because link clicks is what we want. So we are pretty much done with this page. Finally, we go through to the advert itself. So you need a Facebook page to advertise. And I have a Facebook page for Roland Tune Books. That's great. Then you need to have your ad creative. And so I'm going to go with single image or video. And you can do more complicated things about this, which is fantastic. And we'll get into that in a bit. But remember, we're trying to keep things super simple. So we go to add media, add image, upload, and what we shall do is go through to where I have my adverts, and we will upload both of those. Takes a bit of time. There we go, and let's upload the other one as well, since it didn't seem to stick. Okay, so next. So the next screen we go to is placements. And the reason I have, as I mentioned earlier, two different styles of ads is because depending on where Facebook decides to stick your ad, different proportions can be more appropriate. So square is pretty solid, but you might want to change the things that go in the sidebar to the landscape style. I recommend as well in the vertical side of things, change that to the landscape style. And the reason for that, rather than having one that's 9 by 16 and fills in this whole thing, is if you do this, then you get to see the entire picture and you've got room for words. So done. And now Facebook are able to give you some sort of ideas roughly of what your adverts are going to look like in the different placements. Then we've got to write the primary text, the headlines and things like that. And what do we do? Where do we even start with that? Well, we want to grab a headline that really appeals to people. So you can take two approaches here. You could either say it's a book that is like other books. So fans of Clive Cussler will love this. Why not? Why not? Fans of Clive Cussler will love this action packed, steamy sea adventure. Free on Kindle Unlimited. Okay, perfect. Then what we want to do is perhaps spice it up a bit with some emojis. Believe it or not, I've always found emojis to be extremely effective when it comes to things. So what I might do is stick in, you know, a couple of fire emojis. Boom. And you can start to see how that advert might look depending on where it goes. Let's see, this is feed at the moment. It will update in a second. Let's not even worry about that. Oh, I'll tell you why I've got that wrong, because primary text is where this is meant to be. Boom. That's what we like to see. Then headline. What I'll do is I'll take the headline from my book and I'll put that in there. Adventure, intrigue, and romance on the US Navy's first operational hydrofoil. And then I will take the blurb and I'll put that in the description. So, you will find that sometimes Facebook will use some of the bits of information you put in here, and sometimes they won't. And they will pretty much keep it optimized to wherever the placement ends up being. So you just have to trust the process there. Now the website that we are going to is going to be very simply just the URL of the book. So here we go. All I do is put in the URL of High Point. And it will show you here, this is where it ends up. What I've done is I put in a clean URL, which means Amazon will tend to put in lots of referral data and other things like that. You just want to have a clean and simple URL. And don't put any affiliate codes or anything else like that in there, because Amazon will spank you. Which is annoying, because that means you can't track who goes through, where they came from, whether they make a sale or anything like that. But that is just the way it is. Your display link is going to be www.amazon.com. And what this does is it puts this little display here so people know where they're being sent. Facebook is pretty clever, so if you are sending them to some obscure website and you pretend it's going to be Amazon.com, they will say, But this is going to work quite nicely. And finally, your call to action, I put download because that's what I want them to do. And that's it. Now you've got languages here you don't need to worry about. You don't need to worry about tracking. That again is if you're trying to get people to convert to go to your website, do something, and a pixel tells Facebook about that. You can't do any of that with Amazon, so don't worry about it. So we're done. This is pretty much how simple it is. You click publish then. Says publishing 1 of 3. And then it is live. Well, it's not live. What is actually going to happen is Facebook is going to review your advert, make sure that it is appropriate and doesn't have anything dodgy in it. Once they've approved it, it will go live. And over the course of the next few days, Facebook will start testing to reach the audience that you specified. And once they see people behaving in the way that you asked them to, in this way specifically clicking on the link to go through to the product page on Amazon, they will start to build an algorithm to seek out people who they think will do the same thing. And over the course of a few days, you'll see this little thing that says learning on your ad set and your advert. And slowly, your cost per click will drop down as Facebook finds the right audience for your books. And the reason why you will later on find that advertising with a larger budget is much more effective is because having a larger budget means that Facebook can find these people much more quickly. But we are just throwing what we're doing out there and seeing if it sticks and seeing if we're getting any sales from it. So I will hit you up again with another video soon in which we can actually look at the results for like a week's worth of advertising and see if it was worth the effort. Until then, take it easy. I will speak to you soon.